There is a tragic event in American history that many people are unaware of. In 1863, near present-day Preston, Idaho, a horrific massacre occurred. The Bear River Massacre claimed the lives of approximately 350 members of the Northwestern Band of the Shoshone Nation. This event is considered by historians and tribal leaders to be the bloodiest and deadliest attack on Native Americans by the U.S. military. Soldiers entered a valley where the Shoshone were camping for the winter and launched an attack that left about 90 women and children among the dead. The death toll from this massacre exceeded other well-known tragedies such as the 1864 Sand Creek Massacre in Colorado and the 1890 Wounded Knee Massacre in South Dakota. There are some accounts that suggest the death toll of the Bear River Massacre may have been even higher than the estimated 350. In his 1911 autobiography, Danish immigrant Hans Jaspersen recounted walking among the bodies and counting 493 dead Shoshone Indians. He even counted them twice to be sure. About 24 U.S. soldiers also died in the massacre. Darren B. Perry, former chairman of the Northwestern Band of the Shoshone Nation, said that the event almost wiped out their people entirely. Yet despite its significance, it has largely been forgotten. According to many historians, one of the main reasons why the Bear River Massacre is not well known is because it was overshadowed by the Civil War battles that were taking place at the same time. Charles S. Peterson, a historian at Utah State University, finds it ironic that this event receives so little attention, especially considering that Sacagawea, a well-known Native American woman who served as a guide to Lewis and Clark, was Shoshone. Jonathan Dice, a military historian based in Washington, compares the killing of Native Americans in the 1800s to mass shootings in modern times. He believes that people became desensitized to such events. Dice also points out that Native Americans were not considered fully human by many people at the time, which made it easier for them to justify mistreating or killing them. The Shoshone Nation was once a thriving community of 17,000 people spread across several bands in parts of Nevada, Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming. They followed the seasons in their travels. In early autumn, they journeyed to Salmon, Idaho to fish. In the spring and summer months, they went to Utah to gather seeds, berries, and roots. When winter arrived, they settled in the Cache Valley that runs through northern Utah and southeast Idaho. The willow and sagebrush in the valley provided shelter from the wind and snow of winter storms. The Big River, or Boogoi as the Shoshones called it, was abundant with fish and the area was rich with wild game. In the 1800s, the Shoshones and other tribes faced many challenges as the U.S. government sought to solve what officials called the Indian problem. Settlers moving west and Mormon farmers encroached on Shoshone land, while miners passing through in search of gold caused conflicts. After the Civil War began in 1861, President Abraham Lincoln sent regiments from the 3rd Regiment California Volunteer Infantry to Fort Douglas near Salt Lake City to protect mail routes and telegraph lines in the Cache Valley area. However, many of these troops were frustrated with their assignment and longed to be on the front lines of the war. In January 1863, a series of events led to a judge issuing a warrant for the arrest of some Shoshone men accused of killing a white man named John H. Smith. U.S. Army Colonel Patrick E. Connor was ordered to effect the arrest of the guilty Indians. As winter set in, the Shoshones settled in their winter grounds. However, after a spiritual leader had a dream in which Indians were killed by soldiers on horseback, about 50 Shoshones left for another site. Many others stayed with Shoshone Chief Sagwitch. Darren Perry questioned how it would be possible to move people through 4 feet of snow without being followed. On January 29, 1863, Colonel Patrick E. Connor led a unit of almost 300 infantry and cavalry down a frozen bluff into the Shoshones' winter camp. That morning, Sagwitch got up early and saw steam rising from the mountains. As it got closer, he realized it was the breath of horses in the cold air. Sagwitch told his people that he would try to talk to the military leaders and ordered his warriors not to fire first. Sagwitch, a Shoshone chief, believed that the colonel would request the guilty men and he would comply. May Perry, an activist and tribal historian, wrote that Sagwitch instructed his people to remain brave and calm. However, before the colonel could make his request, his soldiers began firing. William F. Drennan, an Army scout, wrote in his memoir that the sudden gunfire caused the Indians to flee their camp like frightened jackrabbits, only to be gunned down like sheep. According to Darren Perry, the Indians were ill-equipped for battle with very few rifles and instead fought with tomahawks, spears, bows, and arrows. As the soldiers advanced, they forced the Indians towards the river. Darren Perry said that they flanked the Indians and the river became their last hope for survival. Some jumped into the river but were shot while others were carried away by the icy current and drowned. Bear Hunter, another Shoshone chief, was captured by soldiers and subjected to torture. Despite being whipped and kicked, he remained silent and did not cry out. May Perry wrote that to him, crying out would have been a sign of cowardice. Impressed by his resilience, soldiers heated a rifle bayonet and ran it through his head from ear to ear. Darren Perry said that the tribe was massacred wholesale. Men, women, and children all lost their lives. May Perry wrote that her relatives spoke of how the blazing white snow turned brilliant red with blood. According to tribal historians, around 150 Shoshones survived the massacre. One of the survivors was a Shoshone woman named Nzichi who was chased by soldiers with her baby strapped to her back. She jumped into the river and hid under an overhang along the bank. However, she struggled to care for her own wounds and couldn't keep her baby from crying. Fearing that the soldiers would hear the crying and kill them both, Nzichi made the heartbreaking decision to throw her baby into the river. Chief Sagwitch's 12-year-old son, Yeager Timbimbu, also survived. He found shelter in a teepee with his grandmother and narrowly avoided being shot by a soldier. After the massacre, Colonel Patrick E. Connor reported on the destruction of more than 70 Indian lodges and the capture of 175 horses. He also mentioned leaving a small quantity of wheat for the 160 captive women and children left in the field. Months after the massacre, Captain James L. Fisk visited the site and wrote that many of the skeletons of the Indians still remained on the ground, their bones scattered by wolves. Colonel Patrick E. Connor, who led the attack, was promoted to the rank of Brigadier General after the massacre. A Shoshone tribal history describes the massacre as a clash between two cultures trying to share the same land, with the Shoshone ultimately losing. Since 1863, the land where the massacre took place has been privately owned. At one point, landowners attempted to plow the land for farming but frequently found human remains believed to be those of Indians. In 1990, the site of the Bear River Massacre was designated as a National Historic Landmark. May Perry and other Shoshones fought for decades to have it recognized as a massacre rather than a battle, as some historical markers had previously called it. In 2018, the Northwestern Band of the Shoshone Nation purchased about 550 acres of land at Bear River. The tribe, which now has a population of about 560, plans to build an interpretive center to honor their history and those who lost their lives in the massacre. Rios Pacheco, a tribal elder, spoke about the significance of the site in a video produced about the massacre. He said that it is the place where their old people died and that their spirits are still there.